this month's episode of Fintech Firebrand. I'm Virginie O'Shea, founder of Firebrand Research, and I'm here to chat to you about this month's FinReg and Fintech news. Now, it was a bit of a slow start at the start of 2025 with regards to regulatory changes. There was not so much work going on at the start of January, but it certainly has picked up towards the end of the month. Of course, this month we've seen the implementation of the Digital Operational Resilience Act, DORA the Explorer as I call it, DORA the Fintech Explorer as I call it. That came into force on the 17th of January. And of course that's going to be a very wide-ranging regime that is across all of the EU, and anyone that's operating in the EU. It introduces 5 pillars of change to do with information and communication technology providers and reporting on those providers and the supply chain risk around those providers within the market. So certainly a lot of new reporting requirements, a lot of new data sets that are going to have to be reported to regulators. There is, of course, some degree of change still going on. There was a consultation paper out this month also on the DORA reporting itself with regards to having a single centralised point for reporting rather than it being decentralised across Europe. So that's still a work in progress. The consultation's out at the moment. And the proposals are to have a single point across the European markets for that reporting. Obviously, there are lots of data security requirements that need to be around that. Big topic with regards to security anyway, because cybersecurity is a part of the digitalization DORA. So operational resilience is certainly focused on improving the industry's cybersecurity health. And also looking at how to deal better with business continuity incidents, a lot more planning, a lot more stress testing and reporting around that with regards to the supply chain as well. So certainly a lot of different things have been happening around DORA this month. But as I say, it's still ongoing. We still have a lot of discussion about the finer points of some of these incoming requirements. In the first quarter, we will have, at the end of the first quarter around March, we're going to have the first reporting. We did have a dry run last year, interestingly, so although only about 6%, 6.5% I think it was, of those reports were actually fully accurate and complete. So the industry had a little bit of work to do on that front, missing data from some of the reporting and things like that. So that was fed back to the 3 regulators at the top across Europe, EIOPA, ESMA, and the EBA, European Banking Authority. They're all looking at how to improve reporting, what kind of feedback and guidelines and Q&As to give to the industry ahead of the reporting deadlines. So much watch the space with regards to DORA, but it's certainly a big piece of regulation. And it's not the only one. Actually, at the end of last year in November, towards the end of November, the Central Bank of the Philippines also came out with its own operational resilience requirements. Now that's the latest one, but it's certainly not the only one. We've seen them in Japan, Australia, Singapore, in the US, although big question mark about what's going to happen there in the US, given we've just seen this month Donald Trump get inaugurated for his second term, not consecutively, as the President of the United States. He has promised an agenda of deregulation. We've seen his inauguration, the tech moguls were in the front row seat, even before the government officials that Trump had potentially appointed. The tech moguls from all of the big hyperscalers, Google, Amazon, Microsoft, obviously Elon Musk being a key figure within all of this as well, as potentially one of the advisors with regards to the Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE as he is calling it, which I refuse to call it. So we're going to see a lot of change in the US. There have been some executive orders out. So there's been some rescinding of some of the regulatory actions from the perspective of the Trump administration. So we are now seeing some changes. We've seen a big swing within the crypto markets, as I promised at the end of last year we'd see a lot of that, and digital asset chat has certainly picked up. We've also seen a slew of crypto ETFs, or as meme coin ETFs, as I should say, have been submitted to the new SEC. Paul Atkins is now heralding the new SEC as Gensler is stepping down. So we should see some interesting decisions to be made on those. Just because the SEC head has changed does not mean that they give up on their investor protection focus, hopefully. So who knows whether these ETFs will be approved. It doesn't seem very logical to approve some of them, given that some of these meme coins are not particularly stable or from an investment standpoint. So certainly a lot of interesting moves to see over the next month or so on that front. On the bank regulation side in the US, we've seen the FDIC head, or the acting chairman at the moment, Travis Hill, talking about his priorities or what's going on at the FDIC. There's been a lot of question marks about whether under the Trump administration the FDIC will survive. I think it will. It will be very hard to get rid of a regulatory body, but I imagine it will change quite a lot. And some of those changes signalled by Hill are related to the regulator's approach to technology. He says that they're going to be more open-minded, I believe it was, in the statement around fintech and allowing bank mergers as well. There is also reference to rescinding some of the focus on corporate governance, which is somewhat worrying, as I'm a corporate governance fan, I must say, and it exists for a purpose, but it will be interesting to see what happens there. And we've also, looking at it overall from the regulatory perspective, we've seen a lot of movement away from ESG, from sustainability. Not all of the executive orders have been related to that. I know there was a big piece of, there was an executive order issued by the Biden government related to data centers being built that would be looking at geothermal energy sourcing. With Trump's focus on drill, and looking at fossil fuels again, that might change significantly. We haven't seen it rescinded yet, that particular executive order, but it may happen in the next month or so. Certainly we expect to see much more focus on carbon heavy industry going on in the US. And they've also withdrawn from the Paris Agreement, which is pretty disastrous, I would say, joining I think it's Iran and a few other countries, a handful of other countries that aren't in the Paris Agreement. So that could spell trouble, further trouble for sustainability within the North American market, but certainly it will not probably impact the rest of the world as much as everyone thinks it will. And there will still be demand from investors on that front. But interesting to see a lot of these moves. There's a lot of change going on. There's a lot of geopolitical instability. So certainly that's something to watch as well with regards to trade negotiations, trade tariffs and their impact on the global markets, and also this rise in nationalism and what that means for other markets in terms of growth over the next few years, next 4 years, dare I say, depending on whether he lasts out that 4-year term. But it will be interesting times, as they say, with regards to all of that. In the UK, the prudential regulator, the PRA, that sits under the Bank of England, has also confirmed it will be delaying the implementation of Basel III until the US makes the move, which is likely to mean a very long wait, given all I've just mentioned with regards to US regulations. So that's another thing to watch on the risk management front. So there's certainly been some discussion in the EU as well about delays to some certain aspects of some of the requirements that sit under the very big umbrella of Basel III. So certainly there's a lot of discussion to go on outside of the US and whether there should be a rolling back or a slowing down in other countries with regards to the rollout there too. One of the other things Firebrand's been looking at for a long period of time is the SEC's crackdown on non-standard communications or off-channel communications, and now that's been something that has been pursued actively over the last 3 years. We saw this month with the outgoing chairs, obviously, focusing on that further still. We saw 12 more firms fined for their off-channel communications and a lack of surveillance of that data. So certainly that is probably something that will continue on. If not, it certainly seems like nearly everybody has been fined for it thus far, given the very, very long list we've seen of firms that have come under the focus of the SEC over the last few years. But certainly improving surveillance, making sure that firms have a handle on how their staff are communicating, particularly with clients, is certainly very important. And one of the slightly more disappointing aspects, I guess, of recent conversations, and this will be my final thoughts for the month, is related to the rollback of diversity, equity and inclusion policies. I've seen a lot of discussion about this in terms of it being a negative for the capital markets industry and the financial services industry as a whole. It's very disappointing to see that a lot of the progress that we've made in terms of addressing the balance or gender balance and racial balance across leadership teams. It's been very slow progress. But some of that hard work has now looked like it's sort of being put in peril with regards to the new approach in the US to those particular topics. There's been some pretty depressing news stories about how the city has reacted to it, and a return to possibly some of the language that we wanted to avoid with regards to the workplace. So I'd just like to remind everybody that regardless of your views on whether some of the DEI policies are worthwhile with quotas and things like that, really please focus on being respectful to your co-workers and making the workplace environment workable. We're there to work, we are not there to insult each other. So I think that's something to bear in mind. Being kind first, you do not know what people are going through in their own personal circumstances, but certainly I think it's very important to bear that in mind, especially as this sort of political rhetoric gets increasingly, how would I put it, aggressive, I would say, with regards to some of these issues. And it's important to know that people are human beings, they should be treated as such.